Wilson Morales here from Black Women TV, talking to Salli Richardson-Whitfield regarding her nomination for Winning Time, the first Black female director to be nominated for a drama series. You know, when I first saw that, at first I'm thinking, oh, it's for the Gilded Age. You know, it's HBO. They know what they're doing, but it's for another HBO series. You know? And
I was
so,
quite surprised. I was quite surprised that, of course, that it was the first, because that sounds kind of crazy, right?
you know, I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, wait a minute. Debbie Allen's been around for a minute. Millicent Shelton's been around for a minute. You know, there've been countless others who've directed drama series. You know, to know that this is the first, it's shocking and it's shameful that like this is how long we've got to go. And I know there's a lot of politics and procedures that go through it, but nevertheless, we're here now. You're opening the doors for others. How does it make you feel?
I'm honored, but at the same time, I thought the same thing. I mean, these are women that I know, and I absolutely respect their work. There are times on a set I said I'll go, I am channeling my inner Debbie Allen here. So it's both. I mean, I was just excited to get an Emmy nod because I was completely surprised. And then for that to be on top of it, I'm honored, really deeply honored, a bit saddened, but then hopeful that that means there'll be a lot others after me.
Mhm. Now, for the episode you're nominated for, you know, it's packed with both, intensity and action sequences, but not all action sequences, which is a good thing, because then it's a game, you know. So take me back to directing that episode. What did you want to lay out as the second to last episode?
Well, I mean, so many characters are growing at this point and finding their voice. I mean, you have Pat Riley, Adrian Brody's character, who is finally our full-on Pat Riley that we've been waiting for. We have Magic taking control of his team. We have the rivalry between Larry Bird and Magic happening, and it's everything everyone's been waiting for. So there are definitely a lot of balls to juggle. Also, our Solomon, who plays Kareem, he comes into his own with his speech. And then on top of it, we do have amazing basketball sequences that, in particular, this episode is really a sequence that I'm proud of because it's not something that was written on the page. It's not necessarily something that we are like looking at just old footage to follow. It's a sequence that my DP and the basketball coordinator really designed together. So when I look at it, I go, that's me up on there.
Is there a lot of pressure when you're doing a second to last, whenever there's a second to last episode, whether it be this series or other shows, there's so much more paying attention to it because we want to, obviously that's going to lead up to the finale.
Yeah.
Is there pressure knowing you have that, that episode to direct?
Absolutely. And that's what I look for. I'm always looking for the bigger challenge. But also, yeah, I knew it was important. And I knew in particular, it's a sports show. So that basketball was going to be important. It was something that throughout the whole season, we had like saved some tricks for, because we wanted the basketball, from the very first episode that I did, we started in a practice facility and we were like, okay, let's be very intentional about this basketball being, really rough and not so polished yet so that we have a place to go to when we do get to this episode. And then once we got to the finale, we knew that, then it's going to be the big Boston game where everyone floods the court. And so that we had an even different place to go there. So there's definitely, there's plans all year for how we're going to take this basketball.
Not everybody knows the result, but it's the stuff beforehand and what we're seeing on TV. And I'm sure people are Googling afterwards, like, did this really happen? Were these relationships the way it is played on screen? How much goes into taking these characters and trying to get it right as opposed to like everything is not always fictional?
Well, I always say, listen, the only thing you can really know is that a conversation happened, right? Or that these situations happen. And then you have to dramatize it from there. I'm going to get off this call and I'm not going to remember everything I said here. So I think that when people are like, I never said that exact word, or I never wore that coat. Well, of course not. And do you remember what you wore? So I think that all we can try to do is have the intent of what we think would have happened in those rooms, what we heard happened in those rooms, what some of the players said happened in the room that they said, and then we grow the scene from there.
You know, the show got other nominations, so it wasn't just you, which is great. But at the same
Of course.
time, it got canceled. You know, usually, you know, HBO is not known to be canceling shows after 2 seasons. You know, and so it's a little disappointing that it won't come back to see what more you could do. But nevertheless, you know, at least it says, hey, listen, if you're gonna go out with a bang. You know, at least it was recognized by folks outside of people who made the decisions to cancel it. And you have another series that you're working on. But for this particular show, you know, and just in general, to get that nomination, and win or lose, the win is already the nomination, the recognition. It's going to open the doors to say, okay, let's take a look, you know, to see what's out there. And it also says that, like, even though it got canceled, it doesn't say, it says that people still watch the show outside of the producers, you
I,
know, so that,
we absolutely had big fans, and I think that it's one of those shows. This happens sometimes to, shows that everyone knows are like of great quality, and for whatever reason it doesn't find its audience. I think a lot of it was the bad press when it started, and then we had COVID. There was just so many things going on around that time. But I think that it's a show people are going to look back on and go, whoa, they were doing some really iconic, uh, visually, very brave filmmaking. And I think this is part of it. We have what, 4 or 5 nominations. Our DP, who absolutely deserve it, costume designers, our visual effects guy. I mean, he is like, in order to get those crowds and to help stitch together our plans, like, it really is a group effort. So I'm excited for all of us because I feel like it's well deserved.
now when you, obviously people love you and they've known you as an actress and then you've transitioned to the directing. At what point did you say this is what I'm going to do full time for the most part? And when did you know you were being taken seriously?
Well, let me tell you, when I started directing, I didn't know I was giving up acting. It just seemed I just started to get one after another. I knew I was going to take some time because I did want people to understand this is something that I was taking very seriously, and that I thought this might be the new chapter. But I think that very early on, when I started getting shows that I really went after, like American Gods and the Wheel of Time, like some of these really big set pieces, I went, okay, it's like people are starting to respect the work that I do. And, maybe in the beginning, I don't know, maybe in the beginning I was getting a job because I was a woman and they're trying to put women in certain positions, or a person of color. But at a certain point, when you're doing shows of this caliber, and I'm working on for, HBO with John C. Reilly and Adrian Brody and now Mark Ruffalo, they're not bringing you in for any other reason than they want the best person for that show. And I feel at this point, that I am one of those best people, and I feel very confident in that. And I'm proud of the work that I've put in, for people to just really respect me as a filmmaker.
Not only that, but you know, people are going to be looking at your career, and like I said, you know, this nomination opens the door because they, you know, for other people who want to make that transition, you know, whether it be the pandemic or the strike, people had to look at their lives and says, what more can I do? I can't just rely on this one thing I do, you know, and whether or not they want to turn into writing or take different roles behind the scenes. You know, you've also elevated yourself as an executive producer of other projects, including this one. You know, so how does that work for somebody who does it take years to be an executive producer, or do you need to have, you know, work like this under your belt to be looked upon to be added as an EP?
Yeah, I definitely think it's something you have to grow into. It just doesn't happen by chance. I feel like I put in the footwork, and as you get to these bigger shows, and when you become like, you know, these last 3 shows, well, I became just me and another director, right? So you kind of naturally become part of developing the look of that show. So you do become more than just a director. And then when I went on Winning Time, I was part of picking the directors for it and making sure that everything was cohesive. So it's it takes time to get there, and there's people like Debbie Allen and those people who are there now, too, and that's just me following in their footsteps and knowing that I need to grow. You can only be an ingenue for so long.
Yes. Now, when you come in as a director, do you come in with a team? You're not just there directing. Do you have, whether it's be your DP or your assistant director or your script supervisor, someone that, they know you, you know them, to make the flow easier?
I definitely at this point get an opportunity to choose my DPs. Um, now, like on Task, I was able to choose my own DP. Some of them I may have came on just a little later, so it was already chosen for me. But yes, it's fun to kind of bring the people in that I love to work with, or that I've worked with before, because you do want that comfort level of people you trust and understand your vision.
Now, let me ask you, even though you got the nomination for this one, do you feel you've done better work elsewhere? It's like this one got the nomination because it may have been seen more so than others. And we know how that goes. Sometimes you have a great show, but it's not widely seen, so the right people are not seeing it. So with this particular episode, did you take what you did with this episode? Was this episode any different than what you had done previously? That you could say, okay, this is better than before, or I could take something out of this?
No, I would say I think that's why I was so excited about this episode, because uh, up until now, because I'd say the show that I'm doing now is even on a different level. Um, but at that time, Winning Time was the hardest thing I have ever done, the biggest challenge I've ever done. That particular episode was the hardest thing I mean, it was just this puzzle that I really had to put together. And again, I think that's why I was especially excited, because you go, oh my God, someone actually saw what I put into this show. Like all these many years of work kind of brought me there. And now coming to this new show I'm doing, I think it's even next level from there. But I took from what I learned at Lakers and brought it over here.
Mm-hmm. Before I get into Task, what's harder, the pilot episode, the penultimate episode, or the final episode, the finale for the season?
uh, they all have their struggle. The first one sometimes is the hardest because it may not be the most exciting, because you have to set up so much stuff. So it's like story without so much excitement. The next to last episode is usually the biggest and most exciting. That's what I'm doing over here too at Task. I'm actually doing the next to last, which is the biggest episode again. And then it's sometimes though that this is the biggest episode, because the finale might just be wrapping things up, so it may not be as exciting, and the first one is setting it up. So every once in a while I seem to get lucky to get the right episode.
Now, with the work you've done at any given time, and you're having a good run right now, do you ever want to transition to make that directorial film debut?
Oh yes, I have a few film projects in the works, and that I'm developing, one at a studio, and two other ones that we're doing some pitching on, and we've got some great interest, and people are coming to me with lots of films.
Mhm.
But for me right now, it really has to be the right one. It takes so long to get a film going that you have to want to invest maybe a few years in just getting it off the ground. So absolutely, that's the next step, hands
So
down.
so for people who are following you, would you say to hopefully make that transition, if they're, or just to start off as a director, do you think it's wise for them to maybe do a series, whether it be comedy or dramatic, to get their foot wet, get a couple of episodes in, they keep learning and learning until they're ready to make that transition to making a full-length film or short film?
It's hard. It's really hard to get a film off the ground, but then again, it's really hard to get your foot into the TV world. Sometimes doing that short film or that small indie is your way into TV. So, you know, it's just kind of that luck of the draw. I wish I could give people a roadmap. There's so many people I see, you know, come in and they have done a bunch of features, but they cannot get a job in TV. And then there's people like me who I feel like I've done so much of TV, but it's hard to get a film because they're like, I made a film. So it's the luck of the draw, and it's just knocking on that door over and over till they let you in to eat, you know, to either medium.
Before I let you go, you were talking about Task. What is Task?
Okay, so Task is Brad Inglesby, who did Mayor of Easttown's new series, and it stars Mark Ruffalo and Tom Pelphrey, and it's, you know, it's set in Delco and, you know, in Philadelphia here, and it's a crime, you know, task force drama, and it's pretty spectacular. I'm very, very excited for this one.
And what's great about it is that, you know, the work you're getting is not a Black show. There's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes, you know, we don't see Black talent behind these shows because they're not often marketed. You know, whether, especially when you're like, whether you're a writer, a director, or an EP, a lot of it has to be, you know, we need to know, as opposed to like, oh, I didn't know she did that. You know, like when you see your name across Gilded Age, you know, like, oh, now I can pay attention, you know, as opposed to like, you know, you go back in the day, you know, like when I spoke to Kelly Park, you know, regarding Frasier, you're like, I don't remember anything Black about Frasier, you know, but now she's on it. You're like, okay, she's at, you know, now we're at a world where you can add in a lot more diversity than years before. So, you know, continue to do what you do. Congrats on this nomination. Obviously, you've got Gilded Age coming up. You've got this other series coming up. You're working, which opens the door for other people, which gives me work because it gives us a chance to talk. And best of luck. Obviously, you know, win or lose, you are already a winner, and we'll talk down the road.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye.